Welcome to Campaign Talk. I'm your host, Mark Belshaw, and in this edition of Campaign Talk, we'll be taking a look at the digital ID protest in central London on Saturday with Musa Ali and the election situation in Birmingham with our latest fantastic candidate, Ousman Noor. Before we speak to our first guest, Musa, let's take a look at some of the action from the digital ID protest in central London on Saturday.
Nicknamed the Brit card, the Tony Blair-era idea was reintroduced by Prime Minister Keir Starmer earlier this year, claiming it will make tougher to work in the UK illegally. The idea has come under attack not only from people and pundits, but also from politicians who say it's not going to work.
With the anti-terror laws, George Galloway was detained for no other reason other than for his views. He wasn't a threat to public security. Laws are being misused to stifle free speech. We're really concerned that if a digital ID is made mandatory, that the government's going to use it as a way to control people and stifle dissent.
All your finance information, all your personal information is going to be on one ID, and it's going to be obviously digital, so it's going to be stored in a database somewhere. And the main issue with that is that database could be hacked. So many private, so-called really secure databases get hacked every single time, right? And the same could happen to this one.
If people are coming in illegally, whether or not they have a digital ID, they will be on the black market economy anyway, and it will actually impact people who are legal citizens, and I don't think it will have much impact in terms of reducing illegal immigration.
If they wanted to stop the immigration, they could do it. It wouldn't even be happening. They're doing it on purpose for this.
And that's not all. Beyond their lack of trust in government, they say there's something much bigger at play.
Now, I'd like to welcome our first guest, Musa.
Hello.
Hello, Musa.
Hello, how are you?
Doing fantastic. Yourself?
Great.
It's fantastic to have you, Musa. Firstly, could you tell us a bit of a background about the digital ID legislation and where it's at the moment?
Brilliant. So the digital ID scheme was a pet project, from what I know, is a pet project of Tony Blair back when he had his premiership a while back. Tony Blair, we know, is a person who, to be a dishonest person, who took this country to war, claiming that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. It turned out to be a pack of lies, and a lot of people died in the process. So this is a person who is still advocating for the digital ID rollout and implementation. Keir Starmer, who is the current premier, did not, when he was running for election, did not have, from what I understand, the digital ID agenda in his manifesto. Yet in September 2025, he announced that it was going to be made mandatory, and there has been a lot of opposition to it. There's been a recent petition, national petition, which has garnered around 300 million people saying that they will not be, they oppose digital ID. But in addition to that, there have been a whole host of figures, both on the right side of the political spectrum and on the left side, who have said that they are opposed to digital ID, whether it's Jeremy Corbyn or Nigel Farage or the Greens. Even the Liberal Democrats are saying that they're totally opposed to digital ID. The government, I think, is trying to force through the legislation, and because they have a majority in Parliament, the likelihood is that they could be able to pass it through and make it into law. There are protests and demonstrations taking place. We just recently came back from one in London on Saturday, where the Workers' Party was present with our own bloc. It is quite worrying where this country is going towards. So this is why it's important that we all oppose it. It shouldn't be about being left or right. It should just be something that unifies us all to be opposed to digital ID.
Mm-hmm. Well, as you mentioned, it seems to be something that's an idea widespread across the political spectrum, regardless of whether people are left or right. Mm-hmm. And as you were mentioned there, you've met a couple of people who were after the digital ID rally on Saturday. Could you give us an idea of why these people were at the rally and the myriad reasons as to why they were opposing digital ID?
I think the great thing about these demonstrations is that it does attract a very diverse range of people, especially people from, I'd say, white working class backgrounds, but also people from other political groupings as well. So it's like a mixture of people who are focused on one issue, but also people from other political groupings as well. Majority of them are concerned about government overreach, the fact that our country seems to be heading down a path where it's become increasingly challenging to have free speech, and where the government is misusing laws, for example, the anti-terror laws that were recently misused by the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, to detain George Galloway, who's a 7 times elected member of parliament at Gatwick Airport. That just gives you a taste of how the current legal infrastructure is being misused to stifle free speech and to stifle dissent within the country. A lot of people are worried, thinking, what would it be like if digital ID is fully implemented and rolled out? How much easier would it be for the government to carry out draconian measures to try and clamp down on speech that they disagree with? I think you don't have to agree with everything that everybody says, but I think it's really important that we do try and defend people's right to speak freely, even when we disagree with them. Just because once you start to clamp down and remove freedoms for people to speak, of those people who you disagree with, very quickly it will turn to people that you agree with as well. So it's a double-edged sword, and we all need to make sure that we are opposed to it.
And I particularly want to focus on that bit of messaging that you said there, that it is a double-edged sword, and that anyone who does support this has to do so with the idea that it could be used against them in the future. For example, you've ended up with counter-terrorism legislation that in the past was simply pushed through under the guise of combating terrorism, and now people like George Galloway, people like Richard Medhurst are being detained at airports across the UK simply for having an opinion that doesn't conform to the accepted narrative, and that they're accused of quote-unquote disinformation. Although I think there was some good news recently in regards to Richard Medhurst, that he was now let go and found innocent, which I think is a torch really to show that you can actually fight against this sort of rhetoric and these sorts of policies. But of course, one of the narratives about opposing digital ID is that it's a particular right-wing thing. And that's appeared on social media that opposing digital ID is right-wing, and that anyone who associates with it, whether that's George Galloway or whether that's someone on the right like Nigel Farage or Richard Tice, that everyone gets lumped into the same boat. But did you see any of that at that rally on Saturday? Is it just an exclusively right-wing movement that the press and also social media wants to try and push it as?
I disagree with that, because like in the demonstration that I've attended, and I've attended 2 of them, there is a whole mixture of people from both left and right, and people in the middle, and some people who don't really identify themselves with any particular way of thinking when it comes to politics, but they're all united on this one issue when it comes to digital ID, in that they want to oppose this kind of draconian, authoritarian legislation and schemes that the government is trying to push through. And I was just having a look through on the different political parties. The Greens are opposed to digital ID, from what I understand. Jeremy Corbyn has voiced his opposition. George Galloway, who's our party political leader, has voiced his opposition to it. I know Reform UK and Nigel Farage and the people on that side are also opposed to it. It just seems like the establishment wants to push this through, and they are trying to clump everyone as being right-wing or being cringe and so on. But actually, it's a very mainstream point of view that a lot of people don't want to see this scheme to be rolled out. And that's why they have had nearly 3 million people sign the petition to be opposed to digital ID. And that's why I think it's really important for everyone to try and come to these demonstrations, because the more people turn up, the more pluralistic the government understands, the more widespread that viewpoint is.
And do you think that this digital ID is simply just one policy amongst many? Because we've seen from both the Labour Party establishment and the Conservative establishment, whether it was Rishi Sunak on the doors of Downing Street declaring our leader George Galloway as some sort of an enemy of democracy and the likes of that, and putting him in the same boat as Nick Griffin and the BNP. And you've also had recently, I think Galloway was on with Tucker Carlson, and Tucker Carlson making a statement of how bizarre this seems that in the West, particularly, it's the centre and it's the establishment that are effectively eroding personal rights or eroding democratic rights, whether it's Keir Starmer delaying elections constantly for local elections because he's afraid he'll lose, or about the repealing of jury trials. You've got digital ID. You've also had before that where people now have to submit digital identification. Well, not so much digital, but like their licenses or their passport in order to access certain content online. That it just feels like it's all coming together all at once, and that the establishment are effectively trying to put things in place. Because if you've looked at the polls recently, it doesn't seem like Labour or the Conservatives are going to really be in any position of power. So do you think that this is just one step on the road to authoritarianism, or do you think that this is just some desperate ploy by the Labour Party to shore up some sort of support in advance of the next general elections and next local elections?
It could be both, really. I think that the freedoms that we're used to enjoying, the freedom of speech, it is being slowly eroded away. I'm not going to go into full details of because there have been some prescriptions and so on involved. But what I would say is becoming harder and harder to speak your mind freely on certain issues. But my question is also, how much money is this going to cost the taxpayer? Because from what I've read online, and this is just just a general search, it's going to cost around £1.8 billion to get the infrastructure rolled out for digital ID. And on top of that, I think it's going to be around £1 billion to set it up. And there will be an annual cost of about £100 million per year. Now, that is an astronomical amount of money. And when you've got councils going bankrupt, left, right, and centre, and I live in Slough, our council was bankrupted by the Labour Party. There was £760 million in debt. A lot of the assets have been sold off to help reduce that debt. But also, there's been a huge amount of environmental degradation that has taken place as a result of the bankruptcy, because the bin services were scaled back. And there have been massive tipping sites popping up left, right, and centre across the borough. And it's become a huge issue where you've got vermin running around. And generally, when you think about it, you've got so much deprivation in working class communities. Why isn't that money being spent on things like social housing, on reducing the cost of public transport? They raised the bus fare, which used to be £2 per journey, to £3. And at the same time, the services that the longer services are being cut. So instead of paying £4 for a return journey, you're now paying not £6, you're actually paying £12 because you have to go on two different buses to make the same journey again. And my only wish is that Shabana Mahmood, I hope, hello, I really want you to actually focus on working class communities, focus on what people actually want, get money back into their pockets. Instead of wasting this money on a policy which is deeply unpopular, both left and right, and very controversial. It's much better to spend that money on building social housing, helping schools with meeting their funding gaps, making sure there's more visible community policing so communities and residents feel safe when they're walking around, getting park wardens. There's so much good that could be done with that money, but instead they're wasting it on this controversial project, which we don't really need.
Mm-hmm. And I think many people will be looking at the actions of the Labour government and wondering what exactly are they doing, because there was no democratic mandate for pretty much any of the stuff that they're doing at the moment. There was nothing in their manifesto that they were going to start repealing the right to jury trials. They weren't promising a digital ID, which, of course, I believe it's got something to do with Tony Blair and the Tony Blair Institute pushing these sorts of ideas. So again, even when he's not in power or directly elected at all, it seems like Tony Blair's fingerprints are left all over this sort of stuff again, whether it was, again, digital ID or in regards to the British foreign policy towards Gaza. Everywhere you look, it seems to be Tony Blair pops up for some bizarre reason. But I think that many people are starting to wake up to this idea that we are turning into effectively a low-wage police state where people are basically having to scrimp and save just to get by, while at the same time the government is increasing their taxes in order to effectively cater to both the military-industrial complex. If you've seen some of the rhetoric in regards to Russia at the moment, where NATO-aligned countries are now openly saying, well, what if we conduct a preemptive strike on Russia? when you get conscription sorted, there's that build up towards a war in order to feed the military-industrial complex, while at the same time you're getting digital ID and you're getting a lot of this security mechanisms being put in place with this sort of digital information kind of industry where you're getting people from the tech industry, whether that's, Meta or Palantir or Oracle or any of these sorts of groups and organizations that are effectively have the government's ear and are dictating policy, which one benefits them financially, and two, what benefits them financially is an increasingly authoritarian surveillance state, because they're the ones who are selling the surveillance equipment, they're the ones selling the surveillance software, they're the ones holding the algorithms. And I don't think many people are particularly trustworthy of having people like, whether it's Musk or the guy who runs Oracle or Zuckerberg, basically handing over their data and scrolling through all of their personal information, particularly when you know that politicians are already in their pocket. I mean, Nick Clegg, former Deputy Prime Minister, I believe he's Vice Chairman at Meta. So it's not exactly, there's no barrier between elected officials and politicians and these billionaires who are effectively oligarchs, let's be honest, who are benefiting massively from the degradation and the repealing of our rights for their basically profit. And I think many people, as you say, when you went on the march, are kind of waking up to the fact, people who were before were politically not engaged are now waking up to the fact that, hang on a second, my life is going to get continuously worse. It's not going to get better now. And they've effectively profiting off of misery, profiting off of war, profiting off of surveillance now. And that's the only thing that they're able to extract wealth out of at the moment. So many people are, as you say, waking up to it. And do you feel that there's a sense on these marches, when you talk to people, that the wool's been pulled from their eyes, that they are now seeing it for the reality that it is, which is a step towards authoritarianism?
I think people are fed up. The cost of living is just going up and up. And, when you just look at the gas bills, electricity bills, when you try to push for alternative ways of thinking, you're automatically ridiculed and deemed to be some sort of communist or fringe thinker. But actually, if we can't speak freely, then it's not good for our democracy. And just going back to your point about who's profiting from what, the central government does not have a good record when it comes to managing our finances. And I think the three main political parties, the Labour, Conservative and Liberal Democrats, they've shown that they are really incompetent when it comes to managing the wealth of the country and the finances of the country. And I'll just hark back to the COVID days where billions of pounds were given out in these dodgy contracts, and there was absolutely no accountability for where this money went. So if that's how the government is behaving, and that was under the Conservatives, the Labour Party under Keir Starmer was supposed to be in opposition to that, and they were a very weak opposition, and they basically allowed the Conservatives to get away with looting billions of pounds worth of our taxes to give out to their mates in dodgy contracts. So how can we trust them with our data? What guarantee is there for us to be able to trust them to not misuse our data or leak it in a way, because these leaks do happen on a regular basis, for them to not use it in a draconian way like they used the existing laws against George Galloway when he was detained by armed officers at Gatwick Airport and had his electrical devices confiscated from him. There's no guarantee that the government is going to treat this matter in a fair manner. And a lot of people are waking up to the fact that they're being robbed every day. Every time they are rolling out these really expensive schemes or HS2 or these dodgy contracts or going into these never-ending wars and supporting Israel with this genocide, they are basically looting money from working class communities. They're taking money out of our communities, out of our pockets, and using it to benefit people who are dishonest, have immoral values. They want to, they're just completely engrossed in their own greed, want to have stash their cash overseas. It's actually depriving working class communities of much needed funding. And I work in the community and I can see firsthand just what a difference it has been over the last 20, 30 years, where people are poorer, they have less money in their pockets. It's a real struggle to even get onto the property ladder. You try to go to the council and try and get onto the social housing register, they'll just laugh you out the building. It's only before, back in the day, anybody could get onto the social housing register. These days, it's only extreme cases you'll be able to get onto it because there's no social housing stock. Why? Because the government continues to spend billions of pounds on these silly projects which aren't designed to help us. It's designed for them to make money at our expense. They should instead be investing that in social housing or things that are more meaningful for people.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that people need to be aware of, because I'm going to say something slightly controversial here. Politicians aren't idiots. They know what they're doing. And I think most people need to realise that they aren't just, accidentally spaffing how many billions up the wall on like vanity projects and stuff, whether it be HS2, whether it be on contractors in the NHS, whether it be on increased military expenditure, which, let's be honest, will be spent on equipment and procurement. It won't be spent on troops. It won't be spent on any of that sort of basic stuff. It will be spent on money that just gets invested into effectively private contractors that rip the taxpayer off. And again, it's not an accident. It's done deliberately. I mean, it's not a mistake that many of these politicians, once they're finished their stint in Parliament, where do they end up? They end up in the private sector, usually in industries that they've passed beneficial legislation for, that they're able to effectively get a nice cushy 6-figure, 7-figure salary job for the rest of their lives on top of the parliamentary pension. They're effectively set for life. They don't really need to do anything else. And I think that needs to be raised to people, that the politicians aren't doing this out of stupidity or because they're economically illiterate or they don't know what they're doing. They do know what they're doing, and they're doing it with taxpayers' money for their personal benefit and for the benefit of the people who donate to their campaigns, who donate to their parties, and effectively support them in getting into positions of power in exchange for a comfortable, well-off life once they've left politics. And I think that needs to be key and needs to be raised. And many people are starting to wake up to the fact that this is a deliberate ripping off of the taxpayer and of the British economy for the benefit of a few people who have not got this country's best interests at heart. And I think that needs to be repeated again and again and again. And I think that some of these people who are on the digital ID protest, whether that be on the left or on the right, is that you're seeing this sort of mentality arise amongst these people. I mean, we've had some people who are saying that they're going to be voting reform, and I can see more eye to eye with them than someone who is still voting for Labour or for the Conservatives, who are dying the wool Blairites or dying the wool like David Cameron big society Conservatives. Like they've effectively lost most people. And you can go to people who support reform, maybe not so much the leadership. I mean, Richard Tice and all them seem to be neo-Thatcherites, and we'll see what happens if they, when they do come into power, what they are actually like, and whether or not they can actually keep that disillusioned membership on board when they themselves become the establishment and become the establishment party. But I think there is grounds there for us to make inroads and to be able to make alliances with people both on the left and on the right in order to fight against this kind of creeping authoritarianism and complete disregard for the people of this country. But just want to raise to you, are you aware of any future protests on the horizon? Are there any potential events coming on in the future that people listening could potentially attend?
There is another protest taking place in January, so we'll be there as well. I can't remember off the top of my head exactly the date of it, but I think it's on the 24th, on the Saturday, and this one is organised by the People's Platform, so I'm sure somewhere in the links it could be posted. But we'll definitely be there as a bloc. The Workers' Party will be present. There'll be a lot of other groups present there. So I do highly encourage everyone to come and join the protest. And one thing I do like about attending those is you get to meet lots of different people. Although you have different viewpoints, you have a different understanding of the way you think the country should be run. They're all in agreement over the issue of digital ID. And it's really a good way to exchange ideas and also to share a bit more about what the Workers' Party is in that regard as well.
Mm-hmm. And a final question to you, Musa. What else can people do out there in order to oppose digital ID?
I'd say definitely come to the demonstrations, but also you can contact your local MP and local councillors. Hopefully you'll get a response. You could also try and avoid. I know it can be a convenience issue, but try to pay in cash wherever you can. There is a really good website called Mass Non-Compliance, and that they were the people who organised the demonstration that took place on Saturday, December 13th. And they do have a whole host of advisory suggestions on what you can do to help oppose digital ID alongside going to demonstrations as well.
Well, that's fantastic, Musa, and I wish you all the best in the upcoming fight against digital ID, and fingers crossed that we can stop this descent into authoritarianism by both the Labour Party and Conservatives. So I want to thank you again for coming on tonight, and yet again, I wish you all the best in the future.
Thank you. Thank you.
My next guest is renowned Palestine activist and now Workers' Party prospective candidate, Ousman Noor. Hello, Ousman.
Hello.
I'm doing
Hi, Mark.
fantastic. Yourself?
Very
it's great
well,
to have you on.
thanks.
It's
Very
great
well.
to have you on. But before we discuss your political candidacy, we just want to take a quick look at some of your campaign work for Palestine.
Times, aren't there? I mean, is it going to be easy to discriminate between these different types of technology?
What we're seeing is a rapid evolution in the military capabilities of using autonomy in weapon systems. And we now need to achieve regulation in order to stop that from getting out of control.
Ousman Noor. By background, I practiced as a human rights barrister in London and more recently as the government relations manager for the Stop Killer Robots campaign. I'd like to make a statement concerning the catastrophic use of artificial intelligence by Israel in Gaza, to speak about the state of the United Nations discussions on this crucial issue. It began as an idea just 3 weeks ago and was launched by Dr. Hussam Hamouda, who spent the last 17 months working in hospitals saving lives throughout the genocide. He came back home to Beit Lahia, where there are now tens of thousands of people who need urgent medical care. It's been 100 days since the genocide in Gaza began, and it's been among the most horrifying periods of many of our lives. Fundamentally for those in Gaza and the West Bank, Palestinians everywhere.
We cannot give to Palestinians what only belongs to them. Their freedom, they are born free. They will live free. They have shown us through their daily armed resistance to the illegal expansionist genocidal regime that they are free. Gaza is probably the least occupied place in the world right now. It is the rest of us who have been entangled in a systematic campaign of propaganda that has taken us away from our freedom, from our ability to resist. And we are now awakening to that sacred duty to resist until all that remains is nothing. Nothing other than truth.
Okay. Now, Ousman, how is the Workers' Party in Birmingham and what have you all been up to?
It's really getting into gear. I'm actually feeling a great deal of excitement. I, for example, launched my campaign on the trail yesterday, went down to Lozells, started talking about our message, what we're here to do. And honestly, there was a feeling of electricity. I think everyone is certain that they want serious change. We are offering that. We've got incredible leadership here. You know, Paul is here. He's providing me a lot of great guidance. I get the impression as well that we're about to grow. I just feel like there's a realization of the need for this party amongst the working people. I mean, I think some of the illusions that people previously had about what we are and what we stand for are starting to drop. So over the weekend, Paul and Pete organized, well, it wasn't strictly Workers' Party meeting, but it was about the commemoration of the Chinese victory over imperialist Japan. But it was a kind of a little insight into the horrors of war, the impact of war on working people, and a reminder of the history of this struggle. You know, what we're really doing is honoring life, right? So I'm excited. I'm excited.
As you say there, the need to remember the past, atrocities and wars that have come in the past needs to be brought up recently, because at the moment you've got the war hawks screaming for conflict and blood throughout Europe, and it seems like many people throughout Europe and working class communities are taking a stand against that and are pushing back against the rhetoric that is coming out of pretty much all of the media and all of the political class, because they're looking at that and saying, hang on a second, nothing's been done in our local area, we're not getting investment, and you're talking about conscripting our young kids and then sending them off to war and then spending more money on arms and all this sort of stuff, while at the same time local communities are pretty much left to fend for themselves. I mean, for example, with your ward, can you give us some idea of the living conditions and the challenges that are faced in your ward and other inner city areas?
Yeah. Look, the truth is, we can think about things in terms of specifics about wards. Every ward has its own idiosyncrasies and its own culture and its own demographics as well. But the real issue is the absolute looting that has been going on of the working people. And that manifests in many ways, right? Some people can't afford to pay their gas bills. Some people are, there's mental health, which is a natural consequence of a feeling of isolation, a feeling of disempowerment. There's unemployment. And so when there's unemployment, it manifests in problems that are particular to that individual, like, Christmas is coming up and there's anxiety of like, oh, can I afford Christmas gifts? And then, that might manifest in a feeling towards others as well. Everyone's a bit grumpy and it's winter. But look, the local issue, you've got the bin strike. Everyone is sick of what's been going. It's been going on for a year. That is contributing to people's mental health. There's rat infestation. I mean, how bad does it need to get before people, I think, as they are now, waking up to what is actually a much bigger problem, which links a lot of the, war. We've been concerned about Palestine, but what does it show us? What happens to people when they don't have power? The Gazans getting exterminated despite global outrage and sympathy, but they don't have power, and Israel just exterminates them. So it's kind of been a wake-up call now for many people to say, well, look, we have to unite ultimately. And the thing that we can unite on are good policies, which the Workers' Party had, what drew me to the party, that actually work, that actually win. So I'm going in with this. We're going. The Workers' Party may be new, but the history of this struggle and what this has manifested in the knowledge that we've got from the history of working people uniting is actually the history of this country. Actually, we're coming on the backs of many legendary people who brought power to the people in this country, right? In England. Mm-hmm. Each of these movements, like the suffragettes, right? It was about women getting the vote, but it was really about power, right? Who's got it? Who's got it in society, and how are they using it? Right now, we've got a clear sense of who's got power. There's a billionaire class. They own we can very clearly see it. You just have to check who owns these things. The large corporations, the private wealth management companies like BlackRock and Vanguard and others, they're hiding away. What we see, what we get angry about is dustbin collections, because that's what's visible. But that power structure paradigm needs to be smashed. And the working people must rise.
I think there's many people who would agree with you that the last, I don't even want to say, it's like maybe century or so like that, you've had various attempts to try and get into power. You've had many pushbacks from the establishment. And it seems at this point now, the establishment has fallen to pieces. There's the perfect opportunity is this moment right now where Labour and the Conservatives are effectively floundering.
Yeah.
And you're looking at Labour and the Conservatives
I don't know if you can
not
hear me,
being
Mark,
able to even
but
be either party of government or the main opposition potentially. Like, that's how dire the situation is. And I think...
Yeah. So I might have cut you off there. Your audio just cut off a bit for a second. But yeah, I think the good news is, if we can take any solace from the disaster of what we're seeing happen to this country and other countries is that it has brought about understanding and awakening in people about who we are, what we stand for, what our values are. These discussions have been manifesting, and I think the Palestine issue, broke open quite a lot of cracks in people's understanding of power. But it is also brought around a realization of how things like racism, we're dealing with that, with this, but it's such a divisive and ultimately unhelpful and non-real, non-actual way of looking at power. Because as you can see, I'm a brown guy, right? People will see me as a brown guy. You got Rishi Sunak and God knows how many brown monsters there are in Parliament, right? But then you've got wonderful brown people, right? You've got lots of people that it's brown. Being brown doesn't equate to power, nor does being white, nor does being black. But we can look at it in a real way. Who actually has power? We can see it. It's actually people with extraordinary wealth. And if we unite, black, brown, and white, that should be a campaign slogan. Then we get power back. It's as simple as that, right? And I think the Workers' Party is the vehicle for us to do this. Just look at the policies. If anyone actually you don't have to look too far. Look at the policies. I don't know anyone apart from some people who are maybe the rich benefactors of the existing system who would look at that and think that's bad. Who? Unless you're the one exploiting the rest of us.
I think that's key as well, that it's not just political, but also economic power, and that the key is to win nationally and be able to win over the minds and hearts of the people of this country, that there is actually hope and there's an alternative that's available, rather than the constant slow decline of the country into effectively an oligarchy. Effectively, that's your democracy is hollowed out to the point where there is no opportunity for change, there is no opportunity for reform, and there's that sort of rhetoric needs to be changed and needs to be offered to people in a form of hope. But crucially, at the moment, we're still a bit spread thin, as it were. The key is to win locally at the moment now, and then build up in order to be able to fight the establishment with time and be able to convince people to join our movement. Do you think the Workers' Party can win any seats in Birmingham then?
So firstly, I'm in this to win. I'm not, I know, I actually have a feeling of knowledge that we will win. It's not even, obviously when you get into local politics, people are concerned about, they get into the murky world of petty power imaginations and machinations. And they're like, there's 4 people running in this ward or whatever. We have truth on our side. I'm convinced of that. And I've scrutinized it. I've come at it from an intellectual lens. I've come at it from a social lens. I've come at it from a spiritual lens. No matter which way you look at it, this party is the vehicle to win. So I'm in it to win this election, and I'm in it to bring others with me. And more people will come. I think we have not grounded ourselves or to the comings and goings of daily life and politics, because this comes from actual rooted principles, economic and social principles. Your party are like fluttering in the wind because they don't know what they stand for or who they are. We have actual, concrete, visible people, policies, and excellent already who are in the party, excellent people who are doing it for the right reasons, and they embody the party. So now all we need to start getting into the. We are now gonna, as you know, the cliche is rise like lions, because I'm confident about what we stand for, and all we just need to do is know it. It's not a question of winning or whether we win or lose. We just know that we win, and that's the attitude. And so I think it's going to be an electric campaign here in Birmingham. Paul is working closely with me. Pete's here. We got really good people. You may not have seen it visibly yet, but a lot of thought has been going into it, and we're gonna take Birmingham, man. I know it.
It's spot on. It's great to have that charisma and optimism, particularly in our movement, because at this moment it's so desperately needed to have that hope and optimism in politics rather than the usual like drivel of like misery and all sorts of stuff. It needs something to cheer people up and give them something to fight for. But sticking in regards to the elections in Birmingham, what is the situation with the independent movement in Birmingham and the Workers' Party?
Yeah. So I actually went to a meeting of the independent. There's a sort of an umbrella organisation being formed here for independents to network, and I think you're familiar with how these things work, right? So it's called the Independent Community Alliance. I went to their meeting, and look, what's nice about this, what we should see as the positive, is there are a lot of people who want to be a part of a change. And there's a lot of people who are saying, are fed up with Labour, don't want to see a reform. They were always against the Tories. Lib Dems, most of these people have flirted around with. Greens are there. But what's clear is there's a lot of independents who feel this urge that they need to be a part of a change. So there's a lot of those people. When I listen to everyone, people of different communities, different backgrounds, different colors, different whatever, speaking up and saying, I want to do. And what I know, because I used to be a refugee law barrister, so I've worked with a lot of people from different backgrounds from all over the world. Everyone sees their problem as their problem. But when you zoom out, you see they're actually all the same problem. And so I was able to speak up as a Workers' Party representative and saying, guys, I'm with you. We are with you. You are us. And therefore I want to empower you guys. You've got the right sentiment, but we also need to be clear that what you're saying is what we're saying. We need to, when we talk about uniting, people, use this expression, there's a single finger and it will break. And if you bring five together, it forms a fist. It's a slogan. But when you actually, what it means in reality is these five fingers need to understand that it is, talk about a class struggle. It actually is. You can scientifically prove it, and what the solution is to it. That does cut across cultural, racial, spiritual boundaries because it's not based on that. And you can show that the ultra wealthy are shitting on all of us, basically. So I think people will join the party. We're not going to be put off by independence, my view. It's a good thing. What that shows is people want change. I think we need to talk to them, bring them in, and I will be. If they want to run, that's fine. We're not against them, but we're in this to win. I want to encourage others in Birmingham to join now. This is the right time. We've got a plan. It's going to be big.
I think that's key is getting the ground with everyday working people in this country, because a lot of the time, particularly on the left in regards to politics, it's very academic, it's very ivory tower, shouting down to people. Basically, I mean, we've seen some of the things that have happened with the all-party conference where it was very activist-based, very academic-based, and you've seen a lot of working-class people who've sort of left. I mean, I think there was something in regards to a leak of like the membership, like a map of your party membership, where it was very much concentrated in university towns and areas that were effectively competing with the Greens, so very middle class, very liberal, very metropolitan. Whereas places like, say, Birmingham, places like, say, Sunderland or Teesside, places like outside Manchester, like, say, Rochdale and all these other areas, there was very few, if any, representation there. Where at the same time, you've got some left and socialist groups who are criticising us and saying that because we focus on a lot of economic policies, we focus on working class politics and on class issues, that we're only interested in electioneering and that we're reformists and that the elections won't change anything or that they won't achieve anything. But what's your view on that kind of perspective from the left in regards to both our actions and our policies?
I've learned something in politics. A lot of the time when those who criticize the truth, when you know you're talking the truth and people criticize you, the truth isn't ugly. The truth is beautiful. What's ugly is what you've put in between it, yourself and it. What tends to happen is you'll say something that is true, and I don't say things like in an arrogant way, like, you know, people say claim that I'm the one telling the truth. It's verifiable, true things. I was, you know, on the Gaza, I was speaking out loads of things that were true. People couldn't get it. Why? Because they're just not there yet, and they will criticize you. But what they're actually, what they actually have learned is what they're saying about you is actually true of themselves. When they're saying they're electioneering and these guys are divisive and these guys are splitters, it's actually a reflection of themselves. Now, what do we do about that? I don't care about. I don't do things for fear of disapproval nor for desire for approval. That's politics, and people see through it now. People just know they're sensitive. You know, people are smart actually. When people are saying, you know, this and this, and, you know, they come across as rowdy, whatever, people think, you know, these guys don't know what they're talking about. They're actually smart. They're actually seen through things and they know the truth. You can't come to them with false promises. So they will tell you, they will know, you know, people in this party know the truth. So all these criticisms, I kind of laugh them off, but I engage with them now in a place of total confidence. And it's quite interesting to see the veils fall. And I engage them intellectually on any particular point, whether it be an economic aspect to our policy or a foreign element. You know, why are we anti-imperialist? People think, oh, you're jihadi or Muslim terrorist. I've had that all my life, right? Because I'm anti-imperialist. No, I mean, you can look at it from just a pure exploitation of vulnerable people who go to war as well. The history of what is like just people getting decimated, working people getting decimated. They did it for love for their family, love for their country, whatever. There's something bigger than themselves, but they got decimated. They shouldn't have to do that. It's a horrible cost to war. Obviously for the people getting bombed, obviously, but also for the people doing it. So that shouldn't happen. You know, when we talk about wealth tax, you know, or taxing the ultra wealthy, it's just bloody obvious. These guys are billion. Like, how are you going to spend this money, even if you wanted to, or in your life? You don't need that much money. I've seen these guys up front in Geneva. I used to live in Geneva. I used to hang around with. I was in billionaires. People who were billionaires. Wasn't impressed. What are you doing? Why do you need all this money? You're just spending. They're actually scared of us, by the way. Spend their lives being scared of what could happen if we realize the truth. So let them be. They should be scared because we're realizing the truth, basically.
And final question to you as well.
Which is good.
To the people who are potentially watching this, for people in this country, working class people, what message would you give them that would give them hope?
Listen, I'm aware that people who are watching this, I hope that you're watching it because you're seeking truth. The beautiful thing about it is no one owns it. And when you have it, you want others to see it as well. Like and truth wins because it is true. So despite the crushing feeling of like loss and defeat and things slipping around us, actually, most of us need to go through that. What I've realized before you realize what's real. So, you know, we've lost faith in institutions, we've lost faith in government, we've lost faith in the media. We've we've lost faith in even our, we never had faith in Parliament, but like, it's just become like, you know, like even, you know, but Parliament does have a legacy of attempting to be representative. You know, we do have elections, but even that, we're like, what is so disconnected to all of us? That is a necessary process to realize what's real. That is look around you, look who's helping you, your communities, it's your family, it's your neighbors, it's your friends, it's your loved ones, it's people you play football with. That's us. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're, you know, working people. When I talk about working people, a lot of us have a silly idea that it's like people who are poor. There are relatively affluent working people. You know, if you're working as a doctor, you worked as a professional, whatever, but working as a business person, you've worked. You know, you worked to earn. So you are part of us as well. So what we need to do is connect these dots and give voice. You know, use this political moment to throw a punch at it, right? And we win that way. So I understand the feeling of losing hope, but the end of that journey is joy, freedom. That's freedom, basically, when you learn it. Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, we're on this. Let's make this fun, guys. We're going to win.
I think that many people would be moved by your comments there, and I think that, fingers crossed, many people in Birmingham will have heard that and will be supporting you in the upcoming local elections.
We're going to we bring out
and full support as well to you for standing as a candidate. And I wish you all the best in the upcoming local elections. And we'll see how it goes in May, and hopefully we'll have a couple more Workers' Party candidates, not just in Birmingham, but across the country. Anyway, it's been fantastic to have you on, and again,
let's win.
Wish you all the best. Guys. And if what you've heard this evening has motivated you to get involved, then visit workerspartygb.org and click the Become a Candidate link to submit your application. And finally, I want to thank every single person who tuned in and engaged with this broadcast. If you agree with what you've heard tonight, share this video, let your friends, family and colleagues know there is a genuine alternative. And again, thank you all for joining us.